What is the deepest, darkest secret you know that isn't yours? My parents told me that before I was born, they used to hang out with their church priest. Everybody in the church knew each other and hung out with the priest as well on occasion. One day, my parents stopped seeing the priest outside of Mass every Sunday, and everybody in church caught on to this and demanded to know why. What did he do that turned you against him? Was thrown at my parents a lot by nosy family members. One day I asked them what this priest did that turned them off to him, because every time the priest's name came up with my parents around, they would just shake their heads and look down. Turns out they used to be best friends with the priest. They bowled, they drank, etc. But apparently, one night the priest was a little too friendly with my parents and stood in front of the rectory door when they were all inside and asked my parents if they wanted an orgy with him and the woman he brought over that night. My parents declined and never went out with him again. And then the rumors started, not by my parents, but by the priest. He was saying some awful shit about them to get the church on his side. Also, my parents say he was pretty upset after they rejected him. To this day, I'm only the second person my parents told about this secret. Edit. TLDR, priest wanted to have sex with my parents. That's quite a story. It's interesting how close they were with the priest before something like that happened. It's also messed up that the priest spread rumors just because he got rejected. I can see why your parents would want to keep that from you for a while. It must have been a strange situation for them to navigate. Pretty wild to think about how some relationships can change so quickly. It's not a secret anymore, and it certainly wasn't deep or dark, but shortly after my dad died when I was 8, I was sleeping over at my best friend's house. I was upset and crying about missing my dad, so my best friend's mom took me aside and told me that when she was around my age, her mom had died. My best friend's grandma was actually her mom's stepmom. It was nice to talk to someone who had lost a parent when they were young, and she made me promise not to tell my friend or her sister until she had a chance to tell them. It made me feel quite special that she had told me this secret and trusted me not to tell my best friend. It wasn't a huge or shameful secret that could ruin lives, but to me it was important to be trusted with this information at 8 years old. That's a pretty touching moment. It's interesting how sharing experiences can create bonds, especially when dealing with loss. It shows the trust people can build, even when dealing with tough feelings. Being a kid and having someone open up about their loss must have felt meaningful in that moment. It's those little connections that can help us feel less alone. One of my best friends had drunken sex with our other best friend's B's sister in his house, out on the balcony while B was home. He's never told him and feels pretty bad about it. B knows and doesn't mind, and also was having sex with a ex-girlfriend in the bathroom while he was banging his sister out on the balcony. It was impulsive for all four of them and not planned out at all. Neither of them has told the other, and neither knows it happened at the same time. I only know because they all separately told me during various drinking nights. Both were too drunk and embarrassed at the time to notice the other couple being equally awkward. That's quite a tangled situation. Everyone involved seems to have their own secrets, and it's clear the mix of alcohol and impulsiveness led to some strange choices. It's interesting that both friends are unaware of what the other did at the same time. It could create some tension if they ever find out. For now, it seems like a strange but funny memory for you as the one who knows everything. A colleague told me someone robbed his safe for $1,000. He suspected one of his friends did it, so he continuously messed with the kids and his parents' cars, slashing tires, cutting wires, scratching paint off, etc. This was many years ago, and he still vandalizes their vehicles on occasion, once every 6 months or something like that. The scummiest part about it is that it was never confirmed that his friend was the one to steal the money. Even if said kid did in fact steal the money, it is no reason to take it out on his parents as well. Basically, this guy I knew is a piece of shit and thinks that his course of actions is something to brag about. He told me this not long before asking me to be his roommate, which, needless to say, I declined. That's pretty messed up. It's wild how some people think it's okay to retaliate without knowing the full story. Vandalizing cars isn't a solution, and it just shows how petty he is. Sounds like the right move to not become his roommate. You definitely don't want that kind of drama around you. It's frustrating to see people think their actions are justified when they're really just harming others. When I was younger, maybe not born, I don't really know the exact time frame, my dad struggled with alcohol pretty badly. My mom stuck with him, helped him through it along with counseling, AA meetings, etc. My parents have never talked about it, so I don't think my siblings know at all. I only found out because I stumbled upon a contract my parents had signed with each other with a plan for getting through it, and even then it was kind of ambiguous and I didn't know for sure if it really was to help my dad with alcohol. I didn't even learn a little better of the story until I asked my mom about it, which was a solid year or two after I found IT also was confusing because he still drinks to this day, but as I've learned, my mom doesn't totally believe that staying completely sober is the best option. It also helped explain why my parents never drink liquor, only beer and wine. I had never thought of that as weird until I realized that a lot of my friends' parents drink the hard stuff pretty often. TLDR, my dad is sort of an alcoholic at it. Strike through. It's interesting how family dynamics can be shaped by things that aren't openly discussed. Your experience shows how complicated relationships around substances can be. Your mom's approach to your dad's drinking seems pretty unconventional too. It makes sense that you would notice differences between your parents and your friends' families. It's good you were able to talk with your mom and piece together some of the story. Understanding these things can take time. My best friend growing up was molested / sexually assaulted by her brother-in-law, her older sister's husband. She was about 14, he was maybe early 30s. At the time she told me, I just thought it was gross and weird. I didn't know how to react. My friend was kind of nonchalant about it, but I think she was scared and traumatized. I just let it go back then because I didn't know what to do with that information. My friend never told anyone but me, and made me swear not to tell anyone. 15 years later, it really bothers me, but I don't want to blow up my friend's world. There's the possibility her family wouldn't believe her, and it would definitely fuck up my friend's life / family, and it would destroy her sister's life too. Basically a huge shitstorm. Anytime I hear anyone talking about that guy, I cringe inside because I know what a scumbag he is. Edit. Wording for clarity. It's tough to process something like that, especially when it's a close friend. You weren't equipped to handle it back then, and it's understandable that it still weighs on you. It's a difficult situation, balancing your friend's trust and the potential fallout if you speak out. It's okay to feel conflicted. Sometimes just being there for your friend in a supportive way can help, even if the past is hard to confront. This reminds me of why my uncle decided to leave the priesthood. He had been a priest for decades, and it had come out that one of the people at the church he worked at had been molesting children. It turned out that the local diocese of the Catholic Church knew that the man had a history of sexual assault, but they elected to not punish him or tell my uncle about his past. Stricken by an insane sense of guilt because he had left children alone with the pedophile, my uncle moved to the other side of the country and abandoned the priesthood. The teachings of Jesus Christ are something I believe most people should have some exposure to, at least at an intellectual or philosophical level. But the organizations and institutions behind them are horrible and corrupt. It's a heavy situation. Your uncle's decision makes sense given the circumstances. It's messed up that the church had that knowledge but chose to stay silent. It can really shake a person's faith in the organization when something like that happens. The teachings themselves can hold value, but the actions of those in power can really tarnish everything. There's a lot to unpack here. I watched a very nice house burn down here in Tennessee. I have a fear now of leaving any lights on in my house when I leave. I turn off anything that isn't a computer in my house when I leave because I fear that one day I'll come home to ashes. I also fear that one day I'll get a call to meet with my school principal to be told that my house burnt down on my mom because she takes sleeping pills, and once she does, she is 100% out. It may be a little irrational, but I've had vivid dreams of this shit that seem to last for days. It's tough to see something like that happen. It's normal to have fears after witnessing a fire. Being careful and turning off everything when you leave is smart. Those vivid dreams can mess with your mind, making it feel even more real. Just try to focus on what you can control and talk about your worries if they become too much. It's okay to feel this way. Actually, it is natural, just not natural in present society. Natural or not, guilt will still follow unless you have no empathy for others, which in that case you're a sociopath or psychopath. I mean, we kill each other pretty often. I wouldn't say it's not natural. I mean, as a human, you feel anger to the point where you want to kill someone, and that's normal. The control of that anger is the difference between us and a caveman. And yet some people still can't control themselves, which lead to murder. It is, however, natural. In fact, maybe even one of the most natural things. Raw human animalistic emotion, man. The idea of what's natural is complicated. Emotions like anger are part of being human, but how we handle them defines our society. It's true that some folks struggle with control, which can lead to serious consequences. It's interesting to think about how much of our behavior is rooted in our past and how we might still be dealing with these primal instincts today. Makes you reflect on human nature a bit. While I can see how there could be a warped thought process that killing them was protecting them in a moment of desperation, I'm certainly not defending that as an action. But she didn't do it, and there is nothing else in her life that would even slightly indicate that she was capable of even thinking it. She would literally be described as one of the most devoted mothers and grandmothers ever. But that is the point. She was so devoted to making their lives perfect that she couldn't fathom them suffering the pain of the divorce. It was a different time. It was so shocking to me when I learned of this secret because it was so out of character. It's interesting how a person's devotion can sometimes lead to such unexpected conclusions. The idea that someone could think drastic measures were for protection is a twisted mindset. She seemed to be all about family and making things right. It's wild to see how circumstances can push someone to a breaking point, especially when they want to shield their loved ones from pain. It makes you rethink how people handle stress and crises. It took us until I got pregnant in February, but you can't guess which day, to really acknowledge that I had lost a pregnancy. We were suspicious. I mean, my period was late by 6 weeks. I avoided drinking and stuff. Here I was the only sober one, and I fell down the stairs. Bled a few days later. We haven't had time to dwell on it. I'm at 29 weeks and on bed rest to avoid preterm labor. Body thinks it's go time. It's not. I imagine once this wee one is born, the grief may sneak up on us. We're both aware, and our families are very pro-therapy, so we'd have no trouble finding someone to talk if we need to. For now, I find myself oddly clinical about it. It's tough to process loss, especially during such a significant time. A lot of emotions can surface later, and being aware of that is a good start. It sounds like you've got a solid support system, and that's important. Keeping things clinical can be a coping mechanism, but it's okay to feel things deeply when the time comes. Just focus on the present and the baby for now.